Just out and about doing some testing for the Jadus intake kit for the XV535, and I thought I'd show YouTube the test setup that I've got, which is actually a rigged up O2 sensor here, the homemade jig that I've got connected to a air fuel meter up here, and right now I'm testing the stock setup, and I've just got the jetting right so that I'm really happy with the air fuel ratio right through the RPM range. I'll just start it up and so you can see everything working. I don't know if the frame rate of the camera is going to be able to catch that, but you can see at idle I'm sitting at about 13, 14, which is really nice. And then when you come out onto the motorway or on ramps, you can pull the throttle and it comes down to pretty much the 12s, which is right where you want it for power. So what I'm going to do next is actually take this stock exhaust system off and debaffle it. So I'll do a video of that, and then we'll do some more testing with our O2 sensor and air fuel ratio meter setup. Yeah, as mentioned earlier, we're going to try and debaffle the stock exhaust. I know this is a modification a lot of you want to do and a lot of people have already done. So I want to make sure that when you install the Jadus intake kit, we get the right jetting for a debaffled stock exhaust system. Now, I also understand that some people will think, oh well, if I do that it's going to be irreversible, and some people have done it in a very foolish way, drilling out holes and stuff on the end of the exhaust here. Now, I plan on doing it in a way that we can actually remove the baffles, pull them out, and then be able to put them back in if we want to quiet it down again later, or if we need to do that for our road registration or our testing. So I would never try and do this with the exhaust system on the bike. So anyone can do this. I'm going to remove the entire exhaust system, put it up on a bench, and then continue showing you how I'm going to attempt to do it. Okay, now we've got the entire exhaust off the bike, and when taking the exhaust off, you'd see that you got two nuts up the front there on the front header, and on the rear header you got two bolts, and then the rear passenger foot peg you got a 14mm nut, and then don't forget this one over the back here, it's a 12mm and 13mm nut. Right, let's set up the camera and have a look at how we're going to tackle this. Okay, so here we get a closer look at the baffles. We see they're welded in baffles. I'll just adjust the lighting. You can see, I guess they're the same one for both the lower and the upper exhaust silencer. And they seem to be held in place with these MIG welds here and here. And what I'm hoping is that these are the only places that they're held in place, and that would be great. So I'm going to carefully grind away this weld so that it releases this inner part here, which I guess is the silencer or the insert, the baffles, and grind this away and do the same thing there. What I'll probably do is try and grab onto this piece here and pull it out. What I'm worried about, what I'm concerned, is that all of these marks here around the circumference are spot welds. And if they're spot welds, we're going to have to drill them out. So let's see what happens when I remove this weld here. So I've managed to remove those welds, first with the grinder disc and then with a cutting disc. So you can see I've carefully removed the mass or the majority of the weld on both of them, and then come in with the cut-off disc and taken a little bit more, and then I've actually cracked it open, the very last remaining piece of weld, with a sharp edge and a hammer, just to split that weld open. Now we're going to see if we can get these baffles out, or if there's more that we need to do to be able to remove them. So, good news and bad news. I managed to get these ends out here just by getting a flat edge. You can use a screwdriver even, putting it up under that lip and then hitting here with the hammer. And you can see I've removed this one on the lower piece of the silencer here. So good news is, great, got those out, and I'll be able to get that one out as well. But the problem is, now I see that my suspects were true, that these dimples here are spot welds. So I'm not sure if I'm going to try and wedge them out, come behind the seam here and try and break them away. That seems like that probably won't be so good if I want to put them back again later. So I think I'm going to drill them all out and make it so that I'll be able to insert either an M5 or an M6 cap head bolt here, a stainless one, that looks really nice on the outside, and we'll just put a spring washer and a nut on the back side. So I'm going to get busy drilling out those spot welds. Okay, so now I've come a little bit further with the process, and to make things easier, use a hole punch. Doesn't have to be a fancy one, just even the tip of a screwdriver. Just make a mark and start with a small bit, maybe a 4mm. Drill your holes. There's my two there. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, there and here. And work your way up to a 6.5. I think I'm going to even have to go up to 7mm to make sure we get rid of all the weld. And on the inside here, I've tried to crack out the welds, but it's not that easy. So unfortunately, I think I'm actually going to have to drill out all of those spot welds, like I said before, just to try and preserve the inserts. And I'll try and cap them up in the end with some nice bolts. So I'll keep drilling and see how we get on. Okay, I've managed to loosen the internal baffles. Unfortunately, I've had to drill these holes up to 8mm, but that was to be able to get rid of all of the spot weld. And you can see there's actually, you can see the split between the parent material here on the outside of the silencer and the material of the baffle on the inside. And if you can't see the split between them, the differentiation, you haven't got rid of all of the weld. So if it still looks like one part, you need to drill a bigger hole. But I think that's going to be okay, because once we get an M6 cap bolt here and put it in there, once we want to put them back, I think that's going to look alright. So yeah, as mentioned, I have to drill those 4 holes on each silencer up to 8mm. So now we've got rid of all the weld, it's just a matter of trying to remove the baffles. I don't predict this is going to be easy, but I'm going to get at it with the poly grips and try and tug them out. Okay, so we've finally managed to get these inserts, these baffles loose, and it's been a bit of back and forth with some WD-40 or some penetrating oil, a little bit of heat. So we've got our heat gun here, and vice grips and a hammer. So not very kind to our vice grips, but I figure these are cheap, so it's okay if I fuck them. Get a good grip on either the rear of the insert, you can see there, or the front, and try and hit it on a nice flat point, and eventually you'll be able to break those welds loose, and your inserts, you can see, will start to come out. There's those there. There we go. So yeah, like I said before, get a pair of vice grips or your poly grips on the end of the insert there, and try and knock it out square with your hammer, and eventually it'll come loose. Again, with some heat and some penetrating oil and a bit of twisting and a bit of patience, you'll get it loose. And this is what they look like here. And you see, I'll be able to tidy up those holes and be able to insert this later if I want to, and put screws in there. What I'm going to do now, I'll probably remove the other baffle and finish up these holes real nice, so I don't end up with any weird burrs. And then I'll put some bolts in place there so it looks nice and finished, and perhaps even factory. So here's what these inserts look like, and I'll be able to dress these up with a bit of sandpaper, some files, and a counter bore, a countersink bit, so we get a nice little edge on those holes. And I'll be able to insert these later when I need to go to get my roadworthy inspection or whatever, or say that I don't like the loud pipes. I can always put these back in, and you've got our stock system intact. So I'm going to clean my mess up here, and I'm going to try and put these end caps back in place. So I'll screw a hole and put those back in there, because that looks nice and tidy. And then I'm going to put them back on the bike and see what it sounds like. So here's the debaffled exhaust back on the bike, and you can see I haven't actually put any screws in the holes because they're actually not visible from any angle that you see them on the bike. If you come behind, you can see the holes there, an even one behind there. But otherwise, I think I won't bother, because this looks nice and stock and good, and it sounds really nice as well. So I'll set up the camera and fire it up and let you viewers hear what it sounds like. Now I'm going to install my O2 sensor rig in the rear here and get the jetting exactly right for this debaffled stock exhaust and the Jadus performance intake kit. If you have any questions about the debaffling and my O2 setup or the performance intake kit, let me know in the comments and I'll get back to you. Cheers for watching today. Happy wrenching and happy riding.